Tova Raisel Myers. Okay, so I think there are copies for everyone. They wrote new copies. We're using the book Halacha of Shabbos. We started last week. We started the first halacha of planting. There are three steps to it. They're all Torah prohibitions that would be initiating, which is putting seeds, planting trees. And then we have promoting growth, which is watering, fertilizing, soaking seeds in order that they root and sprout. Okay. Now, what status do we have with flowers that have been cut and put them in a vase? So if it isn't on, if you put it in the vase on Friday, can you move the vase? What's the, you have a vase on the table, you want to speak to the person next to you. So, so technically, you could move the vase. Once they've been cut, they're no longer, and they are prepared for, you're not going to be replanting them again, but they're going to be to enhance our table. There's an interesting medrash that says Hashem created beautiful flowers to enhance the Shabbos and Yontif. And so once they are cut and your intention is not to reroot them again, so that would be, they're no longer muktzah. However, so once they are, now there's a difference between the flowers that open when you put them in the water. You have the azaleas, you have the roses. So you have those flowers that when you put them in water, they open up. So those we're more careful about them. So technically, you are permitted to move the vase, but with those flowers that open up, there are those who say you should be careful not to change the water level. So you move them very carefully. But halachically, you are permitted to move the vase. It is not muktzah. However, putting water into the flowers into water, that's another issue. So filling up water and putting them in, that's according to all authorities. You're not allowed to do so if the water is already prepared before. So there are different opinions about it. The suggested opinion is not to put them into water on Shabbos. So if someone does bring flowers, a bouquet of flowers, and did not have a chance to put them into the vase of water before Shabbos, suggested thing is to put them in the refrigerator, keep them over Shabbos, they'll stay fresh, and then put them in the water after Shabbos. So
But what do you do if somebody brings you flowers and like they're not allowed to Shabbos and you don't want to embarrass them?
you could tell them that we are not allowed to put them into water. You could say that. Because putting flowers that open, that's an issue. So it looks like you're growing the flowers. So then again, one would not be permitted to do this. So therefore, starting to think of these flowers do open and don't open. You have like that. You have the sunflowers. They usually stay. They are open, but starting to when you have a bouquet, some flowers do open, some don't. You don't get into all that situation. So we don't put them into water on Shabbos, even if the water was prepared before. So our conclusion is that if they're on the table, you want to move them. They're not muktzah. You are permitted to move them. If the flowers open up, you should be careful not to change the water level. Now, you have flowers in a flower pot that's on the window, and you want to open the window. Or you also want to open up the blind where the sun is going to shine onto the flowers. Are you permitted to open the window? Are you permitted to open your blind?
Wait, if the flowers are
I know, but we say that those flowers that open up,
Oh.
it looks like it's growing. It only looks like, so technically it's not a prohibition. It is only something that malas ayin, it looks like you're planting them, so therefore one would avoid doing that on Shabbos. So again, opening the blind, excuse me, open up the window, you have flowers, you have a flower pot, you have plants that are growing on the window. Are you allowed to open the window? Are you allowed to open up the blinds? And the answer is, you should read the book. Okay, please, and when we have a chapter, please read it beforehand so we could just discuss it instead of having to go through every detail, okay? So in our book, this is on page 81. So the answer is, it matters what your intention is. We do have copies of this book on the shelf. There should be copies, and additional copies. So on page 81, at the bottom of the page, we have that it depends on your intention. If your intention is to open the window in order to have the flowers or the plants that are on the window to help them in their growth, the same thing is opening the shade because you want the sunlight to go on the plants, then that would be forbidden because your intention is to promote growth. If, however, you want to have fresh air, you want to have light in the room, it's dark, then it goes according to your intention. So here we have an act. This is on page 81, the bottom of 81. So we have an act that could be permissible or forbidden depending on what your intention is. If your intention is to promote growth, then it is forbidden. If your intention is not concerning the plants, but rather the room, you want light, you want air, so then that would be permissible.
During the Shemitah year,
Mhm.
how do you, it says that you're not supposed to put, like, allow a plant to die, but not promote growth. So what do? Like, you just like water it a little bit?
So that would depend on, yes, it would depend on what actually it needs to keep it in existence, not to promote growth, but to sustain it. So you're permitted to sustain, you're not permitted to promote growth. So now, we have on page 82, we have in some place, when in our sewer system, when you use the water, the faucet, it does not go on plants. But those who live in the country, those who go to bungalows, sometimes the system is such that the water flows on the ground. Was anyone in such a situation where you don't have an actual the plumbing, but rather there's a hose that is attached to your sink, and the water flows onto the grass? So here, using that on Shabbos would be that when you open the faucet, the water is going onto the grass, and that would be watering the grass. So you would have to set up a system before Shabbos that you should not be watering the grass on Shabbos. As far as a sprinkler is concerned, so anything that is set up before Shabbos that is not making light of Shabbos would be permissible, even though the vessels are doing work. So take, for instance, you are lighting the Shabbos candles on Friday. Candles are burning on Shabbos, but you lit them on Friday. That would be permissible. Same thing, you're having chamin, you're having a cholent on the stovetop, on a blech, in your crock pot. So your vessels are not do not have to keep Shabbos. You are permitted to do so. So technically, if now, what about watering your garden, watering your grass? How does that fit in with the Shabbos spirit? Even if you put a timer on before Shabbos and it's working on a timer, is that in the Shabbos spirit or not? When you're coming home from shul, sprinkler is, the sprinkler is on, the grass is being watered. Is that in the Shabbos spirit? That's the question. So technically, there's no transgression that's being done because everything was said before Shabbos. However, we also have to take into consideration the Shabbos spirit. Is that how we want to present the Shabbos that becomes like an ordinary day? So that would be the answer. One should not put on a sprinkler. However, when we have a sprinkler that is in the fields, where you're a farmer, you have the sprinkler in the field, and no one is there on Shabbos, so then technically, it's not, the Shabbos spirit is not being affected, but what's happening in the fields. The fact that it is on a timer and it's being done before Shabbos, everyone is aware of the timer, so then it's not malas ayin that no one will say that you actually put on the sprinkler on Shabbos. At one point, before timers were popular, it was a concern that when you would have the sprinkler on, they would say, "Oh, it's probably put it on Shabbos." Again, malas ayin. The same was also before there were timers when the lights would go on and off. There was also a concern when they first started: are people going to be coming to a conclusion that you're opening and closing the lights on Shabbos? But once the timer became popular, then people assumed that since you are a Shabbos observer, you did not open up the lights manually. These are being done by a timer. So we're going to be speaking about also a timer in different situations when we come to cooking. So as far as the lights in the room are concerned, so a timer has been accepted, and that is used by the Shabbos observers. And people will not be coming to a conclusion that you're opening and closing the lights on Shabbos. The same was also, we spoke about this when we first spoke about malas ayin, when they first came out with non-dairy creamers. So that was something that was new, and whenever they would have an event, and they would be serving after a meat meal, they would be serving the tea and coffee and having a creamer. So then the hashgacha would require that the creamer has to be kept in its original container, so people will be aware of what it is. Now, the non-dairy creamer is very popular, whether it's almond milk or rice milk or all the other types of non-dairy creamers. So they're more lenient about it. I no longer see that they should be putting out the containers at the events, because people now are aware that that does not necessarily have to be something that's dairy, but it would be something that's non-dairy. Eating in a garden, so we have to be careful about the liquid, not to spill liquid onto the ground, because if it is a garden and you're having an outdoor Mesilas Shabbos, so we want to make sure that you do not spill any liquid onto the grass, because that's going to promote growth. When you have your outdoor furniture, you have a chair on your porch, and underneath your porch is a garden. It rained. There's now water on your chair. That's a chair that collects water. Are you allowed to tip your chair, have the water spill on the cement, and there goes where it goes, and will also run off your porch and go onto the grass? Is it a concern? So there are opinions about this. Directly to pick up the chair and empty the water from your chair onto the grass or the garden to begin with, that is done deliberately, that you're watering your grass, even though that may not be your intention, but that's going to be the result. You are promoting growth. So if you're doing it directly, that certainly is if you are watering the grass directly. However, what happens if you spill it on the cement or your porch? And from there, it's going to run down. So there is a room for leniency there. because it is not done directly. Your intention is not to water your garden. It's running on the cement before it gets to the grass, so that would be permissible. So we do have, the leniency to do so. Others are strict about it. As if it stays on the porch, then there's no question about it. If it will run down, there are those who are more strict about it, more lenient. The general opinion is one may be lenient concerning this. This would also be with the sukkah. Those who have the covering to the sukkah, when they want to open up after the rain, so then where's the water going to go? If your sukkah is located on the grass, when you open it up, so that'll go directly onto the grass, cannot be done. So in such a case, one could put a tarp on the side where the doors of the top, the covering to the top is going to be removed. It's not going to go directly onto the grass, it's going to go onto the tarp, so that would be permissible. And one would have to, make the arrangements before Sukkot, before Yontif, to able to make sure that if it does rain, you will not have an issue of opening up your roof. So any questions on this? Okay, so now we go to the next.
I have a question. It says it's appropriate to pour wine and other liquids, but urination is permitted because it burns the plants.
That's what it's telling you that.
Isn't that destroying?
But your intention is not to destroy. That would be a secondary thing. You're not killing the plant. You're not. So, as far as promoting growth is concerned, it is the opposite of promoting growth. So if someone is in the country, what should I tell you? And it's on Shabbos, and are you allowed to have that function done or not? So that's the answer is yes. Okay. Now the next is plowing. And that is in some order of the Lamates Malachas, sometimes they start off with plowing, and then they have the planting, and then others have planting first and plowing second, because after they planted, they would also plow it a second time to cover up the seeds. So plowing is, they had the plants that were used for coloring the curtains, and the idea of plowing is to soften the ground and prepare the ground for planting, for sowing, putting in seeds. So if you have a field or a place where you are intending to plant things, whether it's seeds or trees or plants, so digging the ground and softening the ground so the seed will germinate, will take root. So that is the malacha. Preparing the ground is the idea of the malacha. The actual malacha itself, the av malacha, is plowing, digging up the ground. That would be the av malacha, the principal malacha. And as an offshoot, which is also Torah prohibition, that would include on page 86. So we have fertilizing, clearing the field of stone, leveling the ground, weeding, watering. All of these are preparing the ground when you want to plant. Rabbinic prohibitions are those that one is concerned that one may level the ground, and that would be when you actually level it, that would be a Torah prohibition. When you're doing an activity that might come to it, that would be rabbinic. So now we have sweeping the earth. When you're sweeping, you are actually leveling. If it would be a strong, stiff broom, you have an outdoor broom and you're doing so on earth, you would be pushing the earth and making it straight. So that would be prohibited. Now, what about in a house where we do not have earthen floors? At one point, when we would have in the earlier years, when we would have those students that came from Russia, they said that they still had houses that were not covered with boards or linoleum. They still had earthen floors. They themselves did not live there, but there was the old section of the city that still had earthen floors. And what they would do is they would have to, walking there. So every so often they would have to sweep the floor in order to level it. It shouldn't have all those holes inside. And then they would cover it with a fresh layer of sand to make it look fresh. So sweeping that on Shabbos would be prohibited because as the sweeping is being done, it is straightening the ground. So since it is an issue, so the ruling is that when you are sweeping your house on Shabbos, you should do so with a broom that has a soft bristle. So there are two types of brooms. I don't know if anyone still has the straw brooms. Anyone still see a straw broom? At one time, that was made out of straw.
Oh, straw. Yeah.
Straw. You still have those brooms?
Yeah.
Okay. So our concern is that when you are sweeping with a straw broom, first of all, it has strong bristles, and also you would many a time you break the bristles as you are, depending on how vigorous you are sweeping the floor. So therefore, a straw broom may not be used even on our regular floors. So what we do permit would be one with soft bristles, not to use an outdoor broom, the type that are stiff bristles, but rather the soft bristles. So you may sweep your floor. And what about the bones and things and shells and peels that fall on the floor, which normally they are muktzah? Well, let's say the same thing, you were peeling your eggs, instead of falling into the wastebasket, it fell onto the floor. Are you allowed to sweep it up on Shabbos? Because the eggshells are muktzah.
Question. So when you peel eggs on Shabbos, you have to peel it over the trash can?
That's the suggested. You should peel it over the trash can. In order, it should not be an issue. When you do have them on your countertop, they are muktzah. Now the question is, do you leave them all Shabbos or may you take them away? And the answer would be, if it is disgusting to you, then you do not have to leave something disgusting in front of your face on Shabbos. So therefore, the Rabbanan were lenient, since muktzah is a rabbinic prohibition, they put it in to begin with, that if it's something that is disgusting to you, you may remove it. If you can tolerate it, then it's muktzah. Why are you taking it away? Wait until after Shabbos. If it didn't bother you to do it on the countertop to begin with, where you knew you were going to get the eggshells, so keep it away until after Shabbos. If, however, it does bother you, then you may remove it. In other words, what happens if you had, a roommate you were very particular about having a clean countertop. Your roommate is the one who peeled the egg. She left it on the countertop, so she didn't care. But now you come in, and to you it's very annoying. So you are permitted to remove the eggshells, put them in the garbage. The same would also be with sweeping up the floor. Even though you may have bones on the floor, you have shells on the floor. If it's something that you do not want to have your floor littered on Shabbos, you may take a broom with soft bristles, with a dustpan, and then sweep up and put it in the garbage.
Is there anything about that? Not because you find it disgusting, but like a safety hazard for a baby?
Oh, that's definitely.
That's like for sure.
That's
like
for sure. Right. We
phone.
have the same thing would also be, you have broken glass, which once it breaks, it is muktzah. But then again, we're concerned someone might cut themselves, might harm themselves. So then again, it is put into muktzah rules that if it's something that is a safety issue, you may remove it. You should remove it. Good question. Now, dragging furniture on the ground, we're speaking about on earth. And this is an example that we gave, that if it has sharp legs and it's heavy, it's definitely going to soften the ground. As you're pulling it, it's going to dig up the ground. So then you want to bring it from point A to point B. So in Shabbos, you're not permitted to do so because it is definitely going to do the plowing. It's going to soften the ground. You're not allowed to do so. If, however, it's not that heavy, and you could go either way. Your intention is not to dig up the ground. That's not your intention. Your intention is to get the chair from point A to point B. You're dragging it on the floor. It might soften the ground. It may not. Since there is that question, that's not your intention. You're allowed to do so. We gave something that's definitely going to happen that you're not allowed to do, even if your intention is not so. We gave the example of opening up the refrigerator where you know there's a light inside. So even though your intention is to take food out of the refrigerator, however, you know for sure when you open the door, the lights are going to go on. That is if is your intention. Same as also with dragging something heavy. If you know for definitely it's going to dig up the earth, so then it is as if you're doing it deliberately, which would be a Torah prohibition. Yes.
Sorry. If you're wearing, like, let's say you had this place and your spikes on the bottom of your shoes. And can you walk on the grass or no?
You are permitted spikes.
Like that are gonna cause
The cleats. That would be questionable. One should avoid walking on soft ground when you know definitely you're going to be. Yes. So if it's not definite, the earth is packed hard. So then even sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. But if not for every step, then that would be permissible. Same as also walking.
heels. Like
Same thing is also with high heels. If they are, you have those that are more, those that are very pointy. So then again, one should avoid walking on earth that that will be perforating it, making holes. However, if it's the ones that are not that sharp, but they're more like squared, so then it's fine. So we have pushing a carriage in an enclosed area, place that you are permitted to carry, and it's earth, and it's soft earth. Are you allowed to push a carriage there? The same thing would be with a wheelchair. Are you allowed to push a wheelchair onto the ground where you know that it is going to make a furrow, it's going to make a line? Is there an issue with that? Why not? Okay, it's doing the opposite of plowing. Plowing is softening the earth. Pushing a carriage is compressing. You're doing the opposite of plowing, and that is not a malacha. That is not a prohibition. So since the same thing would be with the wheelchair, the carriage, what it's doing is instead of softening the earth, it is compressing the earth, and that would be permissible. The same thing is also when you're walking on soft earth, you're also permitted to walk across, even though you're going to leave your footprints where you're walking. That would be permissible because you're not plowing, you're doing the opposite of plowing, you're compressing the earth, and that is not a malacha, that is permissible. The same would be walking through grass. And you have shoes that might pull the grass. So when you come to the end, you walk through grass, then you see your shoes have grass attached to your shoes. Was a transgression done? Did you do anything wrong by walking through the grass? And now you see that there's grass on your shoes. There's something you have to do tshuva for? Okay, the reason is your intention it was not your intention, and also for every step that you took was not necessarily going to pull out the grass. You weren't pulling the grass as you're walking. It could happen from time to time. So again, that goes back again, the same example as we gave of pulling something across a field. If it's not definitely going to make the furrows, not definitely going to pull the grass, then there is no transgression that is permissible.
If you find grass on your shoe, it's like you have to take it off. It's like carrying.
Now, carrying would be walking 4 cubits, which would be approximately 6 feet. When you are in the public area, so within the 6 feet, that is your private property. That's your domain. Doing something there, picking something up, putting it down, or whatever it may be, that while you're in that place, is not considered that you are doing anything wrong. So if you want to remove something from your shoe, that when you're there, that would be permissible. You have a pebble in your shoe. Are you allowed to remove it? Yes. If you stop and you And you,
Kind of on that note, if you, let's say you're davening at 770, and you want to go outside to daven because there's too many people, or people are talking, you take the sitter outside on the balcony.
on the
like-
balcony, it is a part of the building.
Okay,
That is an extension to the building that is permissible to do so. So it does say, I think we have signs in front of 770. After you go, there's a ramp. It says after the ramp, you're not allowed to carry there because there's no eruv here. But the porch itself, the balcony, that is a part of the building, and that's
If I
fine.
need to change, like, you're going to use the pathway with my student, I cannot.
There's no eruv. Yes. No.
Yeah, maybe.
make sure someone catches it.
Now, the so washing the floor. Over here, they tell you something. On page 88, it tells you a hospital where you want to keep specifically the cleanliness. It's permitted to wash the floor of stone, wood, tiles, linoleum, not earth, only with a rubber broom, a squeegee that does not absorb water, not with a rag, because that goes into another malacha that we're going to cover when we speak about that. But right now we're speaking about the squeegee, which is rubber, does not absorb water. You push the water into the drain, the floor, not to the outside. And so over here we have on 88, we have a small amount of water that's spilled on the ground. You could wipe it up with a rag that's designated for cleaning, not with a sponge. If there's a large quantity of water, you could put a rag on the spill and leave it in place, or a towel on top of the spill, but not to carry it, because if it became saturated, we're concerned that you're going to wring it, and that itself goes into another category. We'll speak about it when we come to that malacha.
What would you do? Would you like drag it on the floor?
Look, you just leave it there. Just leave it there, yeah. If it's that much water. Now, there was a concern of leveling the ground. This concern was when it comes to sweeping. If it's earth, we're concerned about leveling the ground. You cannot sweep an earthen floor with even because you may push the earth and straighten out the ground. When it came to something that is covered, is not earthen, so we said as far as sweeping is concerned, you could sweep it with the soft bristles. Then there's another time where there was also a concern that you might level the ground, and that is playing with a play that has to do with, you want to have a smooth surface. So you have those who, you have croquet. Anyone familiar with croquet? It is a ball with a mallet, and you have to knock the ball, the ball through the hoops, through the rings. So there you do want to have a level ground. So playing that outside on Shabbos, that would be an issue, because you're playing with a sport that might lead you to doing a malacha, which is leveling ground. So those sports that are concerned about leveling the ground cannot be done on Shabbos. That would include miniature golf. You also, if there's something in front of the ball where you're going to be shooting the golf ball, you want to make sure that it's level, that you want to get it straight to the hole. What one would do is in the weekdays, they would move around the earth that's in front of the ball. So playing that on Shabbos, that also would be forbidden. It might lead you to straighten out the ground. What are other games? Then you also have marbles. Anyone knows marbles? Okay, the same thing is also if you're shooting marbles, also you need a smooth, flat ground to be able to hit the marble that you're trying to hit. And there again, that would also cannot be done. So what about, so outside, all of these are forbidden. What about inside? Can you play it on the floor where it's not an earthen floor? But so here, since it's a game, they did not make the same leniencies as they did with a broom. A broom, you want to keep your house clean. With a game, you have other options. So if the floor is covered with a rug, then we do not consider that as playing on the ground. Therefore, playing on a rug, the games of marble or other games that you're shooting around that you need a straight surface, that would be permissible. So if you have the artificial turf, that would be the same as a carpet. There would be that would be permissible. Same as playing on the table, that's not on the ground, that is permissible. So they did make that restriction, since playing games is not something that's essential. So they did make restrictions that on the floor itself, whether it's a tile floor, a wooden floor, cement floor, one should not play these games. But if it's covered with a carpet or others, now what about playing ball to begin with on Shabbos? There we go. So it matters the age. It matters the age. Is it in Shabbos spirit? Should adults play ball on Shabbos? Is that the Shabbos spirit? That would be whether, even if it's indoors, when you're playing basketball in an indoor basketball, or playing baseball in an enclosed area. So again, it's not the Shabbos spirit. It would not be recommended. They're not transgressing, but it's not the Shabbos spirit. And for children, we let them play. The ball is not muktzah.
So what if your child or like a niece or nephew really want to play ball with you? And
How old?
like they're young.
Young clowns. You could.
But they want to play with you.
You could play with them.
You can play.
You could play with them. Yes.
Not like having like
You're playing.
not like having like a league of like adults play. Like if you want pretty competitive with my.
No, so if the small child is the one that could play, you could play with the child as well.
Okay.
So we were speaking about playing an adult game with adults,
Like
where you tennis court,
like
or the same thing
basketball.
with basketball, the same with the ping pong, even though it's on the table and it's so it did not be an issue, but it's not in the Shabbos spirit. So that would be again for someone who it is not prohibited, but it's not recommended. It's not. Okay. So we're going to go to next Malacha Mitzvah next week. So please read ahead. We have books for everyone. We're going to be doing reaping, and I guess we'll also do gathering as well. We're trying to cover all 39 malachas. So the more we read ahead, we'll be able to have your questions and try to go
What should we do?
through.
We should read reaping, gathering.
Reaping, gathering, yeah,
And threshing.
and threshing, yeah,
The big three.
yeah.
What about if you're playing soccer, like on the field? Is the ball considered like muktzah?
The playing it on the field again with soccer, it's a ground game. You cannot play that game on Shabbos unless it's a turf. Again, the artificial grass, so that would not go into this category, but it's not recommended. But halachically, the ball is not muktzah, and if it's not on the earth, it's a carpet-like covering, and then again is.
You can't like roll a ball inside your house like a floor either.
That's good. We don't, right, unless it's a small child, that's
You can play soccer on the turf with a small child.
with a small
on
child
Shabbos.
on Shabbos.
Or-
That's it.
What? Or. Yeah.
All
Or
right, yes.
inside.
Okay, so now let me have let me finish the attendance. Josephine Tamara is here. Sarah Mara is here. Oh, why Tahila is here. Let's see. Ariel is here. Who else did I miss out? I think I got everyone. Yeah. Okay, have a wonderful day. Have a good Chodesh. Chodesh Tov.
Hi, everybody.